when I qualified in 1983, in the January 1984, I was sent on a course down south somewhere about staffed group homes by one of the, as we called then, one of the managers of the hospital said, this is the future, you need to get off and look at this course. And it's a residential course, it was 3 days. And I remember everyone sat around thinking, how's this going to work? How's this going to happen? Because it seemed so staff intensive compared to what we used to. On the wards, we used to have like 27, 28, 30 people living and only 3 members of staff, 1 qualified member of staff and 2 nursing assistants looking after all the people on the ward. It didn't matter what ward you were on, it was always roughly the same. And then we were talking about moving into group homes, and that would be a lot more staff intensive. I remember coming back to Meanwood after that course and looking to see how we could implement that in Leeds. And at the time then I saw an opportunity, an advertisement for a staff nurse in a rehabilitation unit based up at Westwood Hospital, which was actually 2 houses, 1 house at the end of the drive with 3 bedrooms and 1 house up at the top of the drive that had 3 bedrooms as well. And I applied for that job and got that job as a staff nurse. And that was, they'd already been established when I got there. In other words, 4 people had been selected from the wards of Westwood. The staff who knew them had chosen who they thought could get on together, and they were already in the houses. And that was just such a different train of thought, because in the house they had to do all their own washing, their own cooking, they had to go to the supermarket, get all their own shopping, choose menus, choose what they wanted to make, choose what they wanted to do socially, and it was just so different. It was just so different from working on the wards at Westwood. It was just amazing, and teaching people how to go on buses and how to pay for their own bus fare and things that people had never done before. And that was lovely, because we all did sleep-ins there as well, so therefore we worked a late shift, slept there, and then we did an early shift, so you got to know people really, really well, and they got to know you, and it was like very close-knit, and it was only a small staff team, so you felt for the people that were living in the house, they got a really good new experience, really. And then after 6 to 12 months, somebody was employed to actually go out and find houses for these groups of people to live in, and they moved out successfully, and one of those groups of people are still living together now, which is all them years ago, which is amazing.
Okay, so when you were working in the rehabilitation supported living, what were the facilities like, with the supported living, like what type of like housing and conditions?
Well, it was they were both detached houses, because those were the houses that were available to the hospital to use, and the 2 ladies shared 1 bedroom and 2 men shared another bedroom, which they were very small. When I look at how they were very close proximity to each other, the beds, they didn't have a lot of space, and there was 1 bathroom, and then as a staff, we had to have a pull-out bed downstairs. We had to have pull a bed out in the living room and sleep on the living room downstairs. And then they had a kitchen and they had a living room, and it was just like an ordinary house, so with ordinary things, and it wasn't specialised or anything. And they were allowed, we were allowed to go out and spend money and furnish it. It was already furnished, but then all the actual nice, the pictures and all the things we were allowed to go out and buy. So for the first time ever, people were allowed, to furnish their own house, and trust that those things stayed. Because if you can imagine living on a ward, is that when you had personal property, is a lot of the time you couldn't keep it safe, because people didn't have locked areas, and if you lived on a ward with 30 people, how did you keep all your personal possessions safe? People, you'd buy a picture, but then it'd be on the wall somewhere else and nobody'd know it were yours. And so therefore, when people moved into a group home, people began to actually understand these were their things. And it's probably for the first time for a lot of people that they had their own personal possessions. They had their own wardrobes with their own clothing in, their own socks, their own underwear. You know, they had all their own things, whereas on the ward, there wasn't enough room a lot of the time to have big wardrobes with all your belongings in. And that, you know, for the people who moved in, that was a big thing for people to realise that, you know, their things were safe, I think.
So you're saying about how those who on the ward and didn't have any of the possessions with them, so they literally had nothing except like the clothes or anything, nothing at all?
No, I mean, obviously I worked in Meanwood more than I worked at Westwood, but in the morning, you know, people had very small wardrobes because of the number of beds that were in the dormitories, and you couldn't get everybody's belongings. When I first took over a ward in Meanwood, it was a ladies' ward, and I was given a bunch of keys as the nurse in charge, and I wondered where all the keys belonged to, and I was shown a room, and it was like a locked room, and in that room were all the best clothes. And all the best clothes were locked up because the best clothes were only allowed to be given out for best reasons, as in you were going out somewhere special, it was Christmas Day, it was so therefore the staff were horrified because I went in and along with the other ward sister that was on the ward, we emptied the cupboard and we said people should have the clothes now. They shouldn't be saving the clothes for a special occasion. You know, that on a ladies' ward, you were lucky if you got a pair of tights every day. You know, it was whoever was first up and first dressed had the decent pair of tights because there wasn't enough tights to go around. So therefore, and socks and things like that, people didn't have a lot of their own belongings because people didn't have a lot of money and they didn't have a lot of... And all the clothes came from what was called a laundry room. The laundry room provided all the clothes. So if things had been the same at Westwood, which I'm presuming they were as Meanwood, is that when people first moved into the rehabilitation house and they had their own wardrobe with their own belongings, and then we went out shopping in Bradford and people bought their own clothes. You know, if you sent some clothes to laundry, they used to boil everything used to get spoilt. So if you bought a nice woolly jumper and it got sent to laundry, it might get ruined. Whereas when people moved into the rehabilitation home, they could do their own washing. So therefore we could make sure that it were washed properly and it were dried properly. So it wasn't ruined, it wasn't spoilt. You know, so I think that was quite special to people to have their own belongings.
Okay, and can you remember what was day-to-day life like in the rehabilitation home? No, like what was like the schedule, like the routine of things for the staff and service users?
I think when people first moved into the home, it was very difficult for the people who first moved in to understand that they had choices. So like getting up at everybody got up early, because I think that was what was routine, was used to on the wards in Westwood, is that people used to, and to actually say, no, you don't have to get up early in the morning, you can lie in if you want, we're not doing anything, you don't have to get up if you don't want, and you can have your breakfast when you get up, you know, you don't miss your breakfast just because you sleep in, whereas on the wards, breakfast used to be delivered on a certain time, whereas so in the rehab houses, it took people a long time to understand that if you got up late, you didn't miss your breakfast. You know, if you could sleep in if you wanted, you didn't have to get out of bed at a silly like 6 o'clock in the morning just because the night staff were getting you up. But on a Monday to Friday, we had a sort of fairly routine of like, we had to go to the shops one day a week, we had to do the supermarket shopping, people had time to do their own washing and everything, because obviously, you know, when people first moved, they didn't know how to use a washing machine, how to iron, all those kind of things. So the routine was about developing the skills so that they could live more independently, really. And the other thing is about, you could have a bath when you wanted, you could have a shower when you wanted it. You know, it didn't have to be a routine, because imagine on a ward, if 30 people need a bath and there's only 2 baths, then people get a bit, you know, you can't have a bath when you want, can you? Whereas when you moved into rehabilitation houses, you could. I like the social things, like going out, going to the pictures, going to the cinema, going to the theatre, going to see shows. You know, them kind of things were all things that we could develop and we could do. So that were the biggest, I think for people, it was a shock really that you could choose really that what you wanted to do, and you know, people still had some services of day activities. If they'd been going to the what was called the industrial therapy unit, the IT unit, the workshops as a lot of people called it at Westwood, they still did those kind of things. But the aim was for them, when they moved out of that house and moved out into the community, is that they got services outside, away from Westwood. And they, I know a lot of them now. I see a lot of people in the day service. People are still going to the same kind of day services that were established all them years ago.